Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the fourth episode of English Unlocked, your friendly guide to learning and mastering the English language. I'm Emma, and this is the second and last episode about grammar. Today, we will discuss in more detail about 4 to 5 parts of grammar which are very important, and most people gives no attention to them.
And I'm Jake. Today, we are diving into the fascinating world of English grammar. We'll break down the building blocks of English: nouns, verbs, adjectives, and sentence structure.
That's right. Grammar may sound a little boring or confusing, but trust us, understanding these basics will make your English stronger and more confident.
Plus, we'll also talk about common mistakes learners make and how you can avoid them. So, grab a notebook, sit back, and let's get started.
Let's start with a big question. What is grammar, and why should we care?
Good question, Emma. Grammar is like the skeleton of a language. It holds everything together and gives it structure. Without grammar, words are just a jumbled mess.
Exactly. When you know the rules of grammar, you can form clear and correct sentences. This helps you communicate better and understand others easily.
And the best part? Once you understand the basics, you can build on them to express more complex ideas. Think of grammar as your foundation for speaking, writing, and even thinking in English.
So, whether you're writing an email, having a conversation, or watching your favorite English TV show, grammar is working behind the scenes to help everything make sense.
And here's something to remember. You don't need to memorize everything at once. Learning grammar step by step makes it easier and more enjoyable.
Absolutely. The key is to understand the basic rules and practice using them in real-life situations.
And one more thing, grammar isn't just about rules. It's about making communication easier and clearer. When you speak or write with proper grammar, people understand you better.
Let's break it down even further. Imagine you're building a house. Grammar is like the blueprint. It shows you how everything fits together. Without a blueprint, your house might fall apart. In the same way, without grammar, your sentences may not make sense.
That's a great example. And here's another way to think about it. Grammar is like traffic rules. Just like you need rules to drive safely on the road, you need grammar to speak and write clearly. If no one followed traffic rules, there would be chaos. Without grammar, communication can be confusing and unclear.
Exactly. And knowing grammar helps you avoid misunderstandings. For example, the sentence, "Let's eat, Grandma," is very different from "Let's eat, Grandma." One uses a comma to talk to Grandma, while the other suggests we're eating her, which we definitely don't want.
That's a funny and important example. Small changes in grammar can change the entire meaning of a sentence. This is why learning it properly is so helpful.
Another reason grammar is important is that it helps you sound more professional. Whether you're applying for a job, writing a report, or even sending a text message, correct grammar makes a good impression.
That's right. Employers, teachers, and friends are more likely to take you seriously when your grammar is clear and correct. It shows you care about your communication.
And here's a fun fact. English grammar isn't just for English learners. Even native speakers sometimes struggle with grammar rules. So don't worry if it takes time to master.
That's true. We all make mistakes, and the key is to learn from them. Every time you practice, you get better and more confident.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are part of learning. If you try to use grammar in your daily conversations, you'll improve faster.
Here's a tip. When you read books or watch TV shows in English, pay attention to how sentences are structured. This will help you understand grammar naturally.
Another great way to practice is by writing a journal in English. Even a few sentences a day can improve your understanding and help you remember key grammar rules.
That's a smart idea. And when you're writing, try reading your sentences out loud. It's easier to catch mistakes when you hear them.
Also, don't worry about being perfect from the start. Focus on improving a little each day. Even small efforts lead to big progress over time.
Yes, and using simple grammar correctly is better than trying to use advanced grammar with mistakes. Master the basics first. That's the best strategy.
Another way to improve is by practicing with a language partner. When you speak and listen to others, you'll notice how grammar works in real conversations.
Absolutely. And don't forget the power of questions. If you're unsure about a grammar rule, ask someone or look it up. The more curious you are, the the faster you'll learn.
And one last thing, learning grammar can actually be fun. With games, quizzes, and practice, you'll find yourself enjoying the process.
Absolutely. So, don't worry if it feels challenging at first. With practice and patience, you'll unlock the power of English grammar and become a more confident speaker and writer. All right, let's begin with nouns. Emma, what exactly is a noun?
A noun is a word that names a person, place, thing, or idea. For example, dog, city, and happiness are all nouns.
That's right. Nouns are everywhere. Without them, we wouldn't be able to name anything.
And there are different types of nouns. Let's go through them one by one.
First, we have common nouns. These refer to general things. For example, book, car, or teacher. They do not refer to a specific item, but to a whole category. If you say city, you could mean any city in the world.
Then there are proper nouns. These name specific people, places, or things, and always start with a capital letter. For example, Emma, London, or the Eiffel Tower. Proper nouns are unique names and should always be capitalized.
We also have countable nouns, which you can count, like apples or chairs. You can make them singular or plural. 1 apple, 2 apples.
And uncountable nouns, which you cannot count individually, like water, air, or happiness. These refer to substances or abstract ideas, and usually do not have a plural form.
Here's a fun tip. If you can put a or an before the word, it's probably countable. For example, a car works, but a water doesn't. We say some water instead.
That's helpful. There are also concrete nouns, which are things you can touch, see, or hear, like table or music. These are physical and can be perceived with your senses.
And abstract nouns represent ideas or feelings like love or freedom. You cannot touch or see these things directly, but they exist as concepts.
Another category is collective nouns. These refer to groups of people or things as a single unit, like team, family, or flock. For example, a flock of birds refers to a group of birds.
Collective nouns can be tricky because they are singular in form, but refer to multiple things. For instance, we say, the team is winning, not the team are winning.
And did you know there are also compound nouns? These are nouns made up of 2 or more words, like toothbrush, sister-in-law, or airport. They can be written as one word, separate words, or hyphenated.
That's right. And here's something fun. Collective nouns can be very creative in English. Did you know a group of lions is called a pride, and a group of owls is called a parliament?
That's fascinating. And here's a quick test for you, listeners. Is milk a countable or uncountable noun?
If you said uncountable, you're right. You can't count milk itself, but you can count containers of milk, like a bottle of milk.
That's a helpful distinction. And don't forget, some nouns can be both countable and uncountable depending on how you use them. For example, chicken can mean the animal, countable, or the food, uncountable.
That's true. And knowing these categories helps you use nouns correctly in different situations, making your English even clearer and more precise.
Here's one last point. Nouns often change form to show possession or plurality. For example, dog becomes dogs for more than one, and the dog's bone shows that the bone belongs to the dog.
And irregular nouns don't follow the regular rules, like child becoming children instead of childs. It's helpful to memorize these exceptions over time.
Great point. Listeners, if you want to practice, try identifying different types of nouns around you. What can you see and name? Are they common, proper, concrete, abstract, countable, or uncountable?
It's a fun and easy way to sharpen your skills. And remember, understanding nouns is the first step to building great sentences. Now that we've covered nouns, let's move on to the next big category, verbs. Emma, how would you define a verb?
A verb is a word that expresses an action, a state of being, or an occurrence. Simply put, verbs are the words that show what someone or something does. For example, run, think, and is are all verbs.
Exactly. Without verbs, sentences wouldn't make sense. They give life to your words by describing what's happening.
There are different types of verbs, and understanding these will help you form clear and correct sentences. Let's start with action verbs.
Action verbs describe physical or mental actions. For example, eat, write, and jump are physical actions, while think, believe, and dream are mental actions.
Here's a fun exercise. Think of 5 things you did today. Maybe you ate breakfast, walked to school, studied, laughed, and slept. All these are action verbs.
That's a great tip. Next, we have linking verbs. These don't show action, but instead connect the subject to more information about it. For example, am, is, are, was, and were are common linking verbs.
Exactly. If you say, she is happy, the verb is links the subject she to the description happy. It doesn't show an action, but describes her state of being.
Another important group is helping verbs. These assist the main verb to form different tenses, moods, or voices. Examples include can, will, must, and should. For instance, I can swim. The verb can helps the action verb swim.
Good point. And did you know there are also transitive and intransitive verbs? Transitive verbs need an object to complete their meaning, while intransitive verbs do not.
Right. For example, in she reads a book, the verb reads is transitive because it acts on the object book. But in she sleeps, the verb sleeps is intransitive because it doesn't need an object.
And let's not forget regular and irregular verbs. Regular verbs follow a predictable pattern when forming the past tense, like walk becoming walked. But irregular verbs don't follow this pattern. For example, go becomes went.
It's helpful to learn common irregular verbs because they appear frequently in everyday conversation. Here's a quick challenge. What's the past tense of eat?
If you said ate, you're absolutely right. And here's another tricky part. Verbs also change based on tense. Tenses tell us when an action happens, in the past, present, or future.
For example, I eat is present tense, I ate is past tense, and I will eat is future tense. Knowing how to use these forms correctly is essential for clear communication.
Absolutely. And did you know English also has perfect tenses? These show actions that are completed. For instance, I have eaten is the present perfect tense, showing the action is finished.
Perfect tenses can seem tricky at first, but with practice, they become easier. Just remember, present perfect for actions completed at some point, past perfect for actions completed before another action, and future perfect for actions that will be completed.
Here's another tip. Pay attention to modal verbs like can, may, might, and must. These express ability, possibility, or necessity. For example, I can swim shows ability, while you must study shows necessity.
Great advice. And finally, there are phrasal verbs, combinations of a verb and a preposition or adverb. For example, give up means to quit, and look after means to take care of.
Phrasal verbs can be confusing because their meanings often differ from the original verb. But learning common ones helps you sound more natural in English conversations.
So, to recap, verbs express actions, states of being, or occurrences. There are action verbs, linking verbs, helping verbs, transitive and intransitive verbs, and both regular and irregular forms.
And understanding how verbs change with tense and function makes your English much clearer. Practice using different verb types in sentences to strengthen your grammar skills.
That's right. And now, listeners, try spotting the verbs in your everyday speech. What actions do you do each day? Identifying verbs will sharpen your language skills quickly.
Now that we've covered nouns and verbs, let's talk about another essential part of speech, adjectives. Jake, how would you describe an adjective?
An adjective is a word that describes or modifies a noun or pronoun. It gives us more information about the person, place, or thing we're talking about. For example, in the phrase a big house, the word big is an adjective because it describes the house.
Exactly. Adjectives answer questions like what kind, how many, and which one. For instance, if I say I have 3 red apples, the adjectives are 3 and red. They describe the number and color of the apples.
That's a good point. There are different types of adjectives. and knowing them helps you make your sentences more precise and interesting.
Let's start with descriptive adjectives. These describe qualities or characteristics. Words like happy, blue, tall, and cold are all descriptive adjectives.
Right. For example, the sky is blue. Here, blue describes the color of the sky. And then we have quantitative adjectives. These tell us how much or how many. Words like some, many, few, and several fit this category.
If I say I have 3 books, the word 3 is a quantitative adjective because it tells us how many books I have. What about demonstrative adjectives, Jake?
Good question. Demonstrative adjectives point to specific things. These include this, that, these, and those. For example, I want this cake. This shows which cake you want.
Exactly. And there are also possessive adjectives. These show ownership like my, your, his, her, its, our, and their. For example, that is my car. The word my shows who owns the car.
Another important group is interrogative adjectives, which are used to ask questions. Words like which, what, and whose fall into this category. For example, which book is yours? Which is the interrogative adjective.
Great. And we also have comparative and superlative adjectives. Comparative adjectives compare 2 things, while superlative adjectives compare 3 or more things.
For example, taller is a comparative adjective because it compares 2 things. John is taller than Mike. But tallest is a superlative adjective. John is the tallest in the class.
Many adjectives form their comparative and superlative versions by adding er or est, but some are irregular. For example, good becomes better and best, not gooder or goodest.
That's an important detail, and here's a fun fact. Adjectives usually come before the noun they describe, but they can also follow linking verbs. For example, the cake is delicious. Delicious follows the linking verb is.
Good point, Jake. And let's not forget proper adjectives. These come from proper nouns and are always capitalized. For example, Italian in Italian food comes from the proper noun Italy.
Knowing how to use adjectives correctly makes your language more colorful and vivid. Instead of saying, I saw a dog, you could say, I saw a small, playful dog. It paints a clearer picture.
Absolutely. Here's a tip. Don't overload your sentences with too many adjectives. Too many can make a sentence confusing. Choose the most important ones to keep your message clear.
That's a great tip. And now, listeners, try describing things around you using adjectives. What kind of day is it? What does your favorite food taste like? Practice using adjectives to sharpen your skills.
So, to recap, adjectives describe or modify nouns and pronouns. They answer questions like what kind, how many, and which one. Knowing different types of adjectives makes your speech and writing clearer and more vivid.
And keep practicing. The more adjectives you use, the better you'll become at describing the world around you.
Wow, we've covered a lot today, Jake. We explored the building blocks of English grammar, nouns, verbs, and adjectives, and broke them down into clear, easy-to-understand parts.
Absolutely, Emma. Let's quickly recap for our listeners. First, we learned that grammar is the foundation of any language. It helps us communicate our thoughts clearly and accurately.
Then, we dived into nouns, the naming words. We learned about common and proper nouns, countable and uncountable nouns, and even collective nouns. Knowing how to use them correctly helps you identify and describe people, places, things, and ideas.
That's right. After nouns, we moved on to verbs, the action words. We discussed different types of verbs, including action verbs, helping verbs, and linking verbs. Plus, we explored verb tenses and how they show when an action happens.
And finally, we explored adjectives, the describing words. We talked about their many forms: descriptive, quantitative, demonstrative, possessive, and even comparative and superlative adjectives. Adjectives add color and detail to your sentences, making them more engaging and precise.
The key takeaway is that mastering these 3 parts of speech, nouns, verbs, and adjectives, gives you a solid foundation for speaking and writing English. When you understand how they work together, you can form clear, meaningful sentences.
Exactly. And remember, learning grammar doesn't have to be overwhelming. Take it step by step. Practice regularly by identifying these parts of speech in your daily conversations or when you read and write.
Great advice, Emma. And don't worry if you make mistakes. That's a natural part of the learning process. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
Before we wrap up, here's a quick challenge for our listeners. Try writing 3 sentences using a noun, a verb, and an adjective. Share them with a friend, or write them down to reinforce what you've learned today.
That's a fun challenge. And if you want to revisit any part of today's episode, feel free to replay it and take notes. You're building the skills to become a better English speaker.
Thanks for joining us today on English Unlocked. We're proud of you for taking this step to improve your English, and we'll be back next time with more tips and lessons to guide you on your journey.
Until then, keep practicing, stay curious, and remember, you've got this. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.